What's up, YouTube? And welcome to the next episode of my console collection series. Today we're going to be talking about the Neo Geo Pocket Color, SNK's very short-lived handheld rival to the Game Boy Color and Bandai WonderSwan and some of the other handhelds of the era. Very small library on the system, about 36 US titles, I do believe, a few more that came out in Japan and Europe, but very high quality ratio per title. Most of the titles for the system were just shrunk down versions of SNK, Neo Geo classic arcade hits and console releases, so definitely a lot of good characters that were known for very niche titles if you collected for those systems as well. So as these episodes go, I'm going to talk a little bit about the hardware itself first, and then we'll go into my game collection for the system. First thing you will notice is my Neo Geo Pocket Color has the original box, and this is one of the Japanese exclusive colors of the system, and this is called the Crystal Blue model. What's also interesting about this particular one is this is the very late edition version of the Neo Geo Pocket Color that we didn't even get in the United States. It's very similar in shape and design, with the exception that it is slightly less thick and has a couple other small enhancements, such as better sound than the original model. I actually got this used back in the early 2000s. One of the local stores in town imported a few copies of these, and somebody traded in theirs very soon after they bought it. So it came in really nice condition in the original box. So as I said before, let's start off by talking a little bit about the hardware. This is a non-backlit color portable handheld system. So it kind of slotted in very comparable to the Game Boy Color that was out at the time, but didn't have some of the more advanced features such as backlighting that came with systems that were, a few years away at this point. One thing that's very neat about the Neo Geo Pocket Color is you can turn it on without a game inside. Has this neat little boot up music that probably is going to be really hard to see on the camera, just again due to the non-backlit. But it has this cheerful little menu music, and I'll try to show you this the best I can. It has a few options on here. You can view a calendar. You can also view your horoscope. So let's see what my horoscope says for today. I am an Aries, and it is telling me that it is a bad day for money, probably because I bought too many Neo Geo Pocket Color games. So-so day for health. It is a 4-star day for romance. Good stuff. And a 2-day general rating, whatever that means. Very neat, just very basic horoscope. And you can go back. Sorry, I think I hit the wrong button. Go back to the main menu. You can set an alarm if you want to use your Neo Geo Pocket Color as a clock, and it also will give you the world time in many major cities. So I can look it up in Rio, Hong Kong, Bangkok, Mexico, LA, and so forth. Let's go back to the main menu. Other than that, just some basic settings and a calendar. Does maintain the current time, but just a neat little quirk that it has this extra settings, with some extra features, even without a cartridge in the cartridge slot. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off, just so that music's not annoying anybody. And we'll talk a little bit more about the hardware itself. Probably one of the coolest things about the hardware is it has a clicky joystick, just like all the classic Neo Geo arcade systems and Neo Geo Home arcade sticks and also controllers have that same feature. This ring, we'll talk a little bit more about this when we get into some of the titles, but it actually locks out the directionals, so it makes it a 4-way joystick for certain titles that benefit from that. Kind of a neat little feature that those came with some of the games. You've got your mono speaker down here at the bottom, two input buttons and an option button up here. Not really many games use that, seems like. You have your cartridge slot up here. This is your expansion link port at the top. Very neat thing on that is this actually has a connecting cable that you can get that connects to the Sega Dreamcast and will swap data with some of the Dreamcast titles that were also SNK or Capcom related. Don't have one of those yet, but I'd really like to get one because I'm a big Dreamcast fan too. On the bottom you've got your volume control, headphone input, and AC adapter input. Nothing too crazy there. Nothing really on the sides. And then if you flip it over to the back, you can see that it takes 2 AA batteries, runs pretty long time, I would say maybe 30-40 hour battery life. One button battery to maintain all those clock settings and memory settings for the system itself. so you do have to replace that occasionally. And then, of course, your cartridge slot on the top. But very comfortable handheld. I really like the design of it. I kind of like the way the screen is oriented in the middle of the system, not like at the top or bottom like you see on some of the other handhelds. So overall, cool little piece of hardware. Next, we'll talk about the games. So let me walk you through my game library. A couple things I'll say about this is I've been picking up games for the system as much as I can lately. One thing that I really try to go for is these games in complete condition. So most of my games are boxed and complete, but they are drying up. They're getting really difficult to find. Someday I'd probably like to have a full set of the US library on the system, but I think I'm a little ways away. Maybe have about a third of it as it is right now. So the first game I'll talk about is one of my all-time favorites, which is the Bust-A-Move series. This is Bust-A-Move Pocket by Taito. Very cool that Taito released a game on the system. I think this is the only one. Maybe they had a Densha to Go game in Japan. But we'll talk a little bit about how the games are packaged. So they're in this very delicate design. You have a little folding tab that goes in a slot here. The manuals are tucked away in this little pocket. As you can see, nice little color manual. And then the games came in a plastic case in this little intricate tray. All of this is extremely delicate. Unfortunately, all the US games came in these cardboard packages, whereas the European ones were all in plastic clamshell cases that were much more durable. Several of the Japanese games were also in clamshell titles, although they then went to the paper cases later on as well. So, very common to see the games with a little bit of a smush, as this one has, unfortunately. But still nice to have them complete. So, Bust-A-Move Pocket, very solid title. Just another welcome entry in the series. Pretty basic entry, doesn't have a whole lot of the advanced features, but definitely fun for on-the-go play in the Neo Geo Pocket. Next is one of my all-time favorites for the system. This is Crush Roller. This is by ADK, who made a lot of the early Neo Geo titles as kind of a second-party developer. This is a very quirky Pac-Man style game, and really your goal is to paint the streets and meet a goal before all the monsters get you. Very interesting title. I think this was originally an arcade game in like the early 80s. Correct me if I'm wrong about that. But I've never played the arcade version. I've just played this, and I actually think it's a lot of fun. Seems like this one is starting to creep up in price. This one was a really cheap title for a long time, and it seems to be one of the rarer titles for the US system. So, can highly recommend that if you go for a Neo Geo Pocket. Next up is one of my, actually I guess my only import title for the system. This is a Japanese exclusive, I do believe, called Delta Warp. This was one I got back in the day when my local store still carried a few import games for the system, and it's kind of a quirky little puzzle game. It's you have to like draw and close in the sections of the screen, almost Kicks-like, but it's a little bit quirky, a little bit high difficulty curve. I played it quite a bit when I first got it, and I couldn't even really remember how it all plays out these days. But this is one of the Japanese paper box titles. It's a later release for the system, and this has slightly different design than the US ones. So you've got a top flap on here, again extremely delicate, probably tearing it up as we talk. And then the game came in just this crappy little plastic tray, as you can see. So not exactly an advancement on the original packaging, but that's how the games came in Japan. So next we'll talk about one of the other US titles I got somewhat recently. This is Dive Alert Matt's version. There's also a Dive Alert Becky's version, so you must get both of them if you want to have a complete set. This is one of the later released US titles in which they had this silver foil at the top of the box, made them look a little bit more attractive on the shelf. Couldn't tell you a whole lot about this one. I haven't really played it too much, but it is a submarine RPG style game, so kind of interested to see how that is. I'm sure it's one of the more unusual titles for the system. What I can also say is because it is Neo Geo we're talking about, there are a ton of fighting game releases on the system, and they actually play really well with that clicky joystick and limited 2-button control. They actually adapted these for the system very well. This is the Fatal Fury release, which is Fatal Fury First Contact. Very solid, just has those super deformed characters in it, and if you like the original Neo Geo game, you will like these as well. But there is, like I said, several fighting games using Neo Geo properties. This is probably one of the more difficult games to find for the US system. This is SNK Gals Fighters. Uses just fighting game characters, or female fighting game characters from SNK series fighters. Can't get that out. But this one is very well refined, as it was a pretty late release for the system. I don't think they made a whole lot of these. This one, like I said, is very difficult to find complete. But neat game, plays very well, and one of the final releases for the system. Next up is yet another fighting game. This one is King of Fighters R2. This one is probably one of the more common ones you'll see for the system, because this was an early release. This one probably had a pretty good ratio of people that bought this as a launch title whenever the system first came out. But once again, plays very good. This one does also link up to the Dreamcast for some data exchange and you know, extra artwork and such like that it'll unlock. So has some nice little features like that. This one is probably one of the system sellers, one of the best reasons to own a Neo Geo Pocket Color. This is, of all the fighting games, probably one of my all-time favorites. This is SNK versus Capcom, Match of the Millennium. This one has a large roster of characters. Also links up to the Dreamcast version, and you can connect it to Capcom versus SNK. Has some neat little mini games in it, a lot of just unlockable stuff, so very well done package. I think this one got extremely high reviews. You know, there were a lot of doubters for the system, and when this game came out, it was getting like 9s and 10s in all the magazines, and I think it made people take another look at the system. So very good title there. I got a few more here. Get these over to the camera. Next is one of my all-time favorite SNK properties, and that is Metal Slug. The Metal Slug games on the system are actually very well done. They're not trying to be like a direct copy of the arcade versions, and kind of are their own games in the series, using a lot of the same characters and whatnot. Very good playing games, and well recommended if you like the series. I think that these are definitely worth grabbing. So we have Metal Slug First Mission, and then we have the sequel to that, which is Metal Slug Second Mission. This one's a little bit more difficult to find. As you can see, it has the late release packaging on it. But more of the same. Good stuff, though. So if you like these games, definitely recommend this one, too. Play very nicely. Next up is Pac-Man. This is one of the other very common games for the system. What I can say is it is extremely addictive on the Neo Geo Pocket Color. It is literally just original Pac-Man. There's not really a lot of extra bonuses or fluff added to it, but with that lockout ring for the joystick, it actually plays extremely well using the left and right directionals and up and down directionals. So I would say of all the arcade ports of Pac-Man, this is actually one of the finest. And you can tell that some love went into this, making sure that it played really well on a portable system. So what's kind of crazy is probably for as long as I've owned this system, I've logged the most hours on that one silly game. I've played it quite a ton. Last box game I have is Samurai Showdown 2, and this is yet another one of the fighting games on the system. Couldn't have a Neo Geo game without Samurai Showdown. It's one of the classic properties, of course, and I think this one, I can't remember if this one links up the Dreamcast or not. It might, but I'm not positive about that one. So that is all the box games I have, and I have one more game to show. This one is not in a box, but this is The Last Blade, and it is the US version of it with the ESRB rating on it. What I can tell you about this one is this was one of the final 2 US planned releases before the system was liquidated and blown out. And this game only went to liquidators, so this game was only sold as a loose cartridge in like a jumbo multi-pack that you would see at like Sam's Club or things like that with multiple games. So you cannot get this game complete in the box in a US version. This is as good as it gets, but it is kind of neat that it has a full English translated version. There's one other title that is like this that only comes loose like this, but I'd like to get that one also as well. So that's pretty much everything I have for my collection. Definitely looking for more games to the system. Like I said, the quality ratio on the system is very good compared to other portable systems of the era. Not seeing a lot of licensed games. Most of them are all SNK properties, or just some related, well-known Japanese developer properties. So hopefully you like this look at the system. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you have any other recommendations for the system, I'm open to that as well in the comments. And please take a moment, like this video, comment in the comments section, and have a great day wherever you are. I'll talk to you soon.